What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Truth War. Today, we're going to be talking about the Minnesota Vikings. Couple things to know with the Vikings: they went from 13-4 last year to 7-10 this year. Like I said before, you do take a step back. You do have to make changes in your staff, whether that's from the hired general manager to vice president to head coach to coordinators, the positional coaches, or even if that's scouts in one way or another. And they did make a change at the D-line coach. Now, if you didn't follow Minnesota, you think this is kind of minute, but a big problem with Minnesota and their defense was the fact that they couldn't generate pressure with four. So ideally getting a better hopefully that this is a better D-line coach. This will help them get back to at least winning a winning season. Next thing to note is they do have roughly around $41 million, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So we can talk about free agency with this team. In the draft for my no free agency draft, the first round, I went Rome Odunze. I just thought Rome Odunze would really complete this receiving core, having Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, and then adding Rome Odunze. I think it completes the receiving core. Plus, you have a nice tight end. The only thing is they did cut their running backs, which I'll talk about later. But it really adds to this receiving core in a way that's like, okay, now that you have so many weapons, it's hard to say that this team's going to suffer offensively. I think the fact that you could really put in really a subpar quarterback or the average quarterback, and you could still do very well. I mean, if you had an above average quarterback, you could make a run at the playoffs with this roster. It's a really good offensive roster. Like I said before, they did cut the running back, which I'll talk about more later. But I did decide to draft Trey Benson with the second pick. 6'1", 223, powerful, explosive runner, likes to run upfield. He's physical, and he has great balance. So it will be nice. He'll probably break some tackles. He'll probably bounce off some tackles. He'll do a lot of nice things for Minnesota. With the next pick, I chose edge out of Kansas, which is more like an outside linebacker, and that's kind of the role I drafted him in, is Austin Booker. He's 6'4", 240, so he's a very light edge, which I think you could be that outside linebacker for you. With the next pick, I took Junior Colson, a guy I've talked about on this channel, linebacker out of Michigan, 6'2", 228. This is going to for your interior linebacker position that they need. The pick after their fifth pick, I chose Justin Ebukebi, defensive tackle out of Bama. I know it says defensive tackle, but he played that 3-4 edge / defensive tackle role. So that's the exact role I'm putting Justin Ebukebi in for the Vikings. I'm really filling that hole for them. And now I know I said you could really put any quarterback here. The only thing that I kind of hate about this draft is I wasn't able to get a top quality quarterback. But I did get Joel Milton out of Tennessee, 6'5", 235. The one thing is, like, he has all the physicals. It's just he has to put it together in the game. And that's the big thing about Joe Milton. But, I mean, everything else he looks great at. So I think this is a guy who you could really – like, he could really take the advantage of all these weapons. Like, he has the arm too. He has the best ability to just sling it to them. It'd just be him getting experience and getting better. That's the only thing with him. After that, I addressed the last starter, Kyle Hager, offensive guard out of Boston College. This is just kind of, hey, this is the last need. Let's get the best guard on the board at the moment. And then, sadly, I wasn't able to address the depth. They have a lot of depth needs, but then again, they also have a lot of cap. I did draft, though, Charles Turner, offensive center of LSU, guy I've talked about who did really well in the Senior Bowl compared to other centers. So getting into it, I actually want to scroll down to where you see Alexander Madison. Something released about Alexander Madison post-cut was the fact that the Vikings kind of came out and said they want to do a running back by committee. So, I mean, drafting Benson, that does help out a lot because you can easily split carries with this guy. You don't have to have him as your primary bell cow back. He just has those abilities to be really well. Other than that, nothing else has really happened. Just camp bodies. But like I said before, they do have 40. They have exactly $41,000,000, $92,290 to spend. If we took a peek at some of their free agents, one thing I do know is, which I'll talk to about in a minute, once we get to that player. Minnesota update. Oh, actually, let me do this. 2024 future. Perfect. Kirk Cousins. Let's start with that. So Kirk Cousins is going to cost you around $40,000,000. That's basically your entire cap. They're not going to do that. The one thing I do know is Minnesota has been rumored and leaked to Chicago Bears Justin Fields. Look, I know some people have mixed thoughts on that. Some people think Justin Fields is really good. Some people don't. Look, either way, it's going to be interesting because they will have to trade for him. They won't have to give a haul, but they will have to trade for him, and he'd be costing a lot less. But needless to say, I would not be re-signing Kirk Cousins just because that would screw over their cap space. Justin Jefferson is a future deal, so they won't have to worry about that. Christian Darrisaw is also a future one. One thing, Danielle Hunter, who cost them about $20,000,000. I think that's a pretty impactful one. It would cut your cap basically in half, but you do take care of a big need for them in Danielle Hunter, who is their outside linebacker / edge guy rushing off the pass, who's been really good for them. He's a quietly really good rusher for them, and he's one of the bright spots on this. He's one of the bright spots on this Vikings D line. So if I did the math really quickly, the Vikings would have roughly 20, 38, 71. The Vikings would roughly have a tad bit over $21,000,000 to spend, which is still nice. Like you could still get a nice lump of players and still be okay. Next pick, they could re-sign KJ Osborne. That is a very likely possibility. Now that will kind of chunk it because then you have that'll take out a third of the remaining cap space, a little over actually. But you do take care of a guy who's been in the offense, a guy who understands the offense and knows what to do, and you could build future chemistry if you want to. Which in this case, I will be re-signing based off of his market value. Now, this isn't exactly saying that they will pay the price for this player. This is just saying hey, this is a realistic option that I could see via free agency. And this would leave them with around $13.5 million. And then kind of finishing this up more, Josh Dobbs, backup quarterback, probably a guy who's going to hit free agency and leave. I don't expect them to re-sign this guy. They don't really need – they have another quarterback on the roster, so that's what I kind of see as more of a cap saving wise. Cam Akers, a running back for them. I could see them resigning Cam Akers to kind of, be that starter and then draft a guy later in the rounds, or maybe get a UDFA, undrafted free agent, if you don't know, to fill that hole. But he really isn't their starter. I don't really know if they're going to go down that route. I don't want to say they will. So I'll kind of leave it as it is because that's kind of a very gray spot. The same thing with Josh Dobbs. It's kind of a gray spot with how they're going to play. So I don't want to say they will go out and get it. One I could see, though, is Brandon Powell to kind of – they do need to take care of depth. That is something that they could do, and that would help them in the draft. And it really honestly wouldn't kill them either because he's close to the veteran minimum. And then 686, 169. And then they'd have roughly a little under $12 million to spare. I mean, you could still sign players. You could still do some things because if I put up the Vikings, if I put up the Vikings cap, I could actually scroll down and see what the picks that they have, how much the draft capital is going to cost them. And right now they have a nice amount of picks. It's going to cost them roughly about $8 million, depending on if they trade or what they do with those picks. It's going to cost them roughly about $8 million. And it's important to know this because you want to know how much money you can actually splurge in free agency, which they have a remaining $3,629,760 left to splurge. Look, I mean, you could sign another three players to a veteran minimum deal, and then build through the draft. Which, I mean, like, that's a very big possibility. The one thing that does suck is the Kirk Cousins contract. That one kind of bites because he has a dead cap of $28.5 million. So he's taking a nice chunk out of the Minnesota Vikings. Because if they had that, they could really build this roster, but they just don't. So getting into it, here's what kind of the draft would look like post free agency. And of course, there are two ways. If you don't know, pre-draft and post-draft. If I can find the Minnesota Vikings. There we are. Starting right out. Steelers draft falls. Okay, and Jaden Daniels has fallen off the board. Normally, I would go Romadunze, but we did address the starting receiver position. Leatu Latu, 6'4", 265. He became a prototypical edge size. I could see them having, I don't know, maybe you do kind of play Leatu on necessarily the opposite side of. You play him on the opposite side of the Daniel Hunter and kind of say, hey, let both these guys rush off the edges. And that's kind of the idea that I'm thinking. I'm not going to go Byron Murphy. Let's see if I'm looking at this. Let's see who would be available. Back. Not tackle. Back. Could go back and get Terry Benson. I think I will do that actually. I think I will get Terry Benson to be that. Or actually, let me look at the quarterbacks. Who's still on the board for quarterbacks? Spencer Eiler, Michael Pittman, Jordan Travis, Sam Hart. Okay, so Jordan Milton really won't be bad either. So yeah, I think I will go Trey Benson. And I don't think 5 quarterbacks are going to go off the board in the first round. I think that's kind of crazy. Like, I do think there will be a quarterback available for the Vikings. I'm decently sure there'll be a quarterback available for the Vikings. Let's see, what else could we do? Guard, inside linebacker, and quarterback. Guard, inside. We could go Brandon Coleman of TCU to play the guard spot for them. And then we'd still need inside linebacker and quarterback. Joe Milton. Defense linebacker. Curtis Jacobs. I think I will do that. Go Curtis Jacobs for that inside linebacker spot. Offense quarterback. And then, yeah. Object. And then go Joe Milton to fill out that quarterback spot. And it does suck because they're not really getting good luck with the quarterbacks. But now the good news is you can splurge. You can actually pick up some depth now. They could go a bunch of different options, actually. Not running back. They do need a nose, but Justin Ebukebe really won't be that nose for you. He'd be more that edge guy. Do need tackle help in the depth. Let's see. Not running back. Not safety. Not defensive tackle. Ebukebe wouldn't fill that. Back, not corner. Not pattern linebacker. They could go try tonight actually out of UTEP to fill out their inside the linebacking position. Takes care of that. And then I think I'll go Javon Foster, offensive tackle of Missouri, to help fill up that depth that they need. Kind of seeing how the rest of this falls. With their last pick, I will go safeties. I'll go center. Andrew Raymond, 6'4", 305. Good zone runner. He's good at run zones. Help fill it out. And this is kind of how I kind of picture this really. This is how I picture the. This is how I picture the draft for them right now. Just a heads up, teams can fluctuate contracts to where it's cheaper now and more expensive later, and that's a very well possibility. And the Vikings could do that to really help out this team because they have 3 players left and they'd have 4 needs, and you don't want to start filling out needs with UDFAs. You kind of want to fill in those last couple spots on the depth chart at each position with UDFAs. So your 3rd or your 4th string players, depending on where they're at. Like, not of course not receiver. It's be more of like your 5th or 6th string receiver, but like let's say at tackle, your kind of your left tackle, your 3rd best left tackle. You probably pick up a UDFA or pick up UDFA here to kind of fight and compete to get on the field. That's what you really do. So it's not really ideal to pick up a UDFA. Because honestly, you could pick up a UDFA and kind of stack a position, but it'd be more to try to develop them into be something. With that being said, this is the like I said before, this is the draft I came up with. Tell me what y'all think. Tell me what you think the Vikings are going to do. Tell me if you think the Vikings will trade for a quarterback. Tell me if you think they won't. Let me know. Other than that, thank you all for watching, and I will talk to y'all next time.